Hi, my name is Mithat Külür and I'm the Chief of Unit for Investment and Technology Promotion at UNIDO. In this lesson, what I'd like to do is give an overall introduction to our investment promotion program, go through some of the modules, how we implement them, and in subsequent lessons we'll go in detail into the different modules and have training courses on how to implement them. So we will be talking about the UNIDO investment program, and I will talk about the role of foreign investment, why we promote foreign investment, why foreign investment is a component of development assistance. We'll talk about the role of national institutions, how our governments, investment promotion agencies, private sector organizations, etc., are working to attract foreign investment. I'll talk a little bit about the objectives of the program, what we're trying to achieve and how we're trying to achieve them. And then I will talk a little bit about the investment monitoring platform, which is a platform we've put together to help investment promotion agencies and governments to monitor, understand, and control the investment promotion process. So we start first with the role of foreign investment. Foreign investment is always regarded as a component of development because it has many potential direct benefits. When there's foreign investment in a particular sector, obviously it increases the output in that sector. So that's a direct impact of foreign investment on the economy. It helps the balance of payments. If things are produced locally for export or produced locally that replaces imports, that helps the balance of payments of the economy. Foreign investment brings in new technology, new knowledge, new know-how, and the direct effects of technology transfer. Direct in the sense that the company that invests brings its own technology, and that has an impact on the economy of a country. Institutional transfer. What we mean by that is how companies and institutions learn to run a business, and that is an important part of the technology transfer. It's not only technology in the sense of how to produce a product, how to manage a process, but it's also about how to manage people, how to manage an organization. Labor conditions and income levels. With more foreign investment into especially a less developed, poorer economy, wage levels are increased, income levels are increased, so the earning power of workers are impacted in a positive way. Industry composition and market concentration. Foreign investors come into sectors that domestic investors may not invest into, so it diversifies the economy and widens the composition of the industry. And of course, there's adaptation. With foreign investment coming in, they help country to understand different ways of doing things. What I talked about up to now are the direct effects. That means the effect that a company that's investing into your country has. Now, there are some indirect effects as well, what we call externalities. We mentioned direct technology transfer. There's also indirect technology transfer in that other companies not related to the foreign investor may learn from some of the technology things that a foreign investor brings in. So domestic companies may learn new ways of doing things. We call that indirect technology transfer. Labor mobility. Workers that are trained in the operations of a foreign company may move to other firms, may set up their own businesses, and this type of labor mobility increases the skill levels overall. Demonstration effect. If a foreign company, foreign investor is producing something, using a new process or technology, or produces a new product, other companies in the economy, domestic companies, are able to learn. It's a demonstration effect. They learn new ideas, new ways of doing things. The pioneer investor effect. What we mean by that is new sectors in an economy are hard to open up. Domestic companies are not experienced in those new fields, may not know what the costs are to invest in those fields. So a foreign investor coming in and being the first investor to invest in a particular firm, in a particular field, would be like a pioneer in that field, would open up that field to follow on investments by domestic companies, because now domestic companies understand what the operational conditions are, what the costs are, etc. Reverse engineering, sometimes this is seen as a negative, sometimes as a positive, but basically it's a demonstration effect where companies, domestic companies, would learn how to do products by looking at products produced by foreign companies and try to duplicate them. Imports. Also, with a foreign company coming into an economy, they may start importing inputs for their operations, which may not have been available before in the local market. So domestic companies become exposed to new types of inputs and products that they may otherwise not have been exposed to. And we have the spin-offs. You can have a foreign company that starts its operations, it grows, and eventually some parts of it may spin off as independent companies, perhaps by foreign investors. So you have the expansion effect. This crowding in of domestic investment is very important. What we mean by that is, with a foreign investment coming into a country, it creates demand for new products, new inputs, new services, etc. And that demand creates opportunities for domestic investors to invest into operations to provide those inputs to the foreign investment. So we call this crowding in of domestic investment. It creates a demand for skilled labor and therefore stimulates the production of skilled labor. So if foreign investment comes in, creates a demand for skilled labor and is willing to pay higher wage for skilled labor, that stimulates training programs, an interest in people to learn new skills to be able to respond to that new demand. Supplier development, local value chains linked to global value chains. This is basically an extension of the crowding in of domestic investment, where local companies could become suppliers of foreign companies, and eventually the foreign operation would deepen the supply chain, the local supply chain, and link the local supply chain to perhaps some of the international supply chains it may have. And that brings in an expanding level of internationalization to the economy. Now, of course, there are also some potential negative impacts of foreign investment. The opposite of crowding in could be crowding out of domestic investment. A foreign investor coming in a particular sector may be having a much more efficient operation, and it may therefore crowd out domestic companies in that particular sector. Some foreign investment may impede domestic innovation, with local companies bringing in foreign companies bringing in foreign technology and linking it to global value chains. So, for example, a global brand sets up operations in a country to supply inputs to its global branding. It will bring in very concrete specifications on how it wants things to be produced, and leaves very little room for the local producers to participate in the innovation process. And this is sometimes seen as potentially impeding or slowing down the capacity of local companies to participate in innovation. Now, it's also possible that local firms cannot reap the spillovers if they cannot invest. We mentioned that foreign investment presents opportunities for domestic companies through technology, know-how, skilled labor, etc. But local companies, domestic companies, need to be ready to absorb those potential benefits. If they're not ready in their absorptive capacity, if they're not ready to invest in operations to take advantage of those opportunities, then those opportunities only remain a potential and are not realized. Another possible negative is loss of strategic assets. Sometimes investment promotion leads to selling of strategic local assets to foreign investors, and it creates political problems. And also, similar to that, compromise of autonomy. Selling too much strategic assets may result in loss of autonomy on how resources are used for the benefit of countries' strategic plans. Some people say that some forms of FDI just leave a hole in the ground. For example, certain types of mining investment brings in a operation that digs out and exports the underground wealth of a country and does not interact at all in any way with local producers, etc., imports everything it needs, exports everything it extracts from the ground. And that kind of very limited interaction with local players leaves very little impact in terms of growth and development on the economy. Transfer pricing is an accounting trick that sometimes multinationals play, where they transfer certain cost items to their operations in countries where taxes are high, and transfer their income generating cash flow to countries where taxes are low, thereby playing a distribution among their network of operations to ensure that the net profits are maximized. And of course, the issue of environmental degradation, which is something that countries need to be careful about, that operations of foreign companies do not degrade the environment. Now let's talk about the role of national institutions. The role of the government. In order to ensure that local companies are able to absorb the potential benefit of foreign investment, they need to develop innovation systems. Local companies need to benefit from innovation systems domestically run, so that they are able to participate in innovation, they are able to absorb certain technology inputs and build upon them, innovate, and become innovators themselves. Promote research and development, promote training and education, establish standards and testing infrastructure. Important for domestic companies to be able to export, to be able to test that their products are competitive in the international marketplace. Encourage increasing knowledge component of value-added activities. As local companies become part of global value chains, initially they are usually at the lower end of a value chain. They add the smaller portions of value in the global value chains, and it's important through government action and policies that local companies move up that value chain into higher value-added components. Governments also need to promote clusters and promote linkages through supply chain development, increase the local content of operations. And this is very important. This is perhaps one of the key ways that governments can make sure that the potential impact of foreign investment is fully realized, by ensuring that local companies are in a position to interact with local companies and penetrate their supply chains. And of course, the role of government is to design and enact effective industrial policies. Again, to repeat, the most important impact of foreign investment is its interaction with domestic companies, its ability to increase the efficiency of the domestic sector, increase the competitiveness of the local economy. Governments have set up investment promotion agencies to support the promotion of inward foreign investment. These agencies have been put into place to overcome information deficiencies and build the image of the country. They need to define the image. If there's any internationally bad image, they should address it. Talk about what new developments are being implemented to overcome some of the bad image issues. And also to overcome market failure problems that are a result of information shortage. There have been some success stories of very effective investment promotion agencies, and a lot of IPAs, investment promotion agencies, need to learn from those success stories. What are some of the basic activities of an investment promotion agency? We mentioned image building. That means branding of the country. Promotion, to sell that image worldwide, to disseminate it through activities, events, inward, outward missions, through their embassies, through media, through advertising, etc. Facilitation. Facilitation is very important for inward coming foreign investors to know that there's somebody in the country who will support them, who will provide information, who will help them to set up the company, to get clearances, to get land, to find construction companies, etc., and overcome all the problems that may ensue when operating in a foreign environment. Aftercare is very important. IPAs provide the facilitation to help companies set up and start their operation, but their relationships with the foreign companies must not end there. Aftercare is important to not only ensure that problems that may crop up in the operations of companies need to be solved, but also to help companies expand their operations, find new opportunities, reinvest, grow their operations. It's said frequently that the best way to promote new investment is to keep your existing investors happy, because if they're happy, they'll do the promotion for you for new investors. Policy advocacy. It's a very important part of investment promotion agency or IPA activities. IPAs, since they interact continuously with potential investors, existing investors, etc., they have a very good idea of what investors need, what investors' problems are, and what are the issues that need to be addressed at the policy level to solve some of the most pressing problems that investors have. And IPAs need to use that knowledge, use that frontline interaction with foreign investors to be able to work with their policymakers to ensure that the policymakers respond to some of those requirements and create a welcoming environment for foreign investment. incentives are an important issue. It's actually a part of policy advocacy, in that IPAs need to understand what are critical issues that investors have that can be addressed through incentives, and be able to design targeted incentives that can address those issues directly, so that unnecessary incentives are not given that may cost the government revenue but may not be critical in actually attracting the right kind of investors. There may be other sort of investors that may be more critical, and it's really the job of the IPA to understand how investors would react to incentives and advise the government in how those incentives should be structured and implemented. Okay, let's now talk about the objectives of the UNIDO program. One of our objectives is diversification. Many developing economies are very much dependent on primary commodities, and industrial development is required to diversify the economy so that that dependence is reduced, and to do that, investment needs to take place. Flow of investments into productive sectors are below expectations. In most developing countries, not all, the expected flow of investments have not really materialized, in spite of many efforts that countries have made to liberalize their economies, to privatize their big businesses, and taken a lot of action to stabilize the economy, setting up new institutions like IPAs. Still, the level of investment that had been hoped for has not materialized. Second observation is that the anticipated development impact from foreign investments have not been realized. Countries have promoted foreign investment with the hope of, or the expectation that the foreign investments would have a major impact on their growth trajectory. This has not really has not been materialized, because even in countries where there has been a measurable increase in foreign investment, the real impact of that foreign investment on the lives of the people in terms of reducing poverty on the ground has not been seen. And lastly, the national institutions, IPAs for example, involved in investment promotion have not been that effective. We mentioned all the activities that IPAs need to undertake to be effective promoters of foreign investment. In many countries, the IPAs have not really met that challenge and been able to implement their work in a very effective way. So the strategic objectives of the UNIDO program are to assist countries in attracting foreign direct investment with development impact, and to develop national institutional capacities to absorb the benefits of foreign direct investment. Now, foreign investment comes in different ways, different shapes, different sizes. There's portfolio investment and there's foreign direct investment, FDI. Portfolio investment is when, for example, a foreign entity, individual, company, finance institution, whatever, purchases stocks or shares of a company. Portfolio investment is considered very easy to change. Investment that's made today can be removed instantly through sale of stock or shares. And portfolio investment chases returns on capital. Wherever there's potential growth, portfolio investment will flow there because the flow is easy and instantaneous. And as I said, it's very volatile. FDI, on the other hand, is not volatile. FDI is when a operator sets up an operation in a foreign country and manages that operation. So FDI exploits business opportunities provided by location factors and its own assets, compensating advantages over local firms. They drive and actively manage their projects. Foreign investment through FDI brings in ownership advantages to the country. So a foreign investor that owns a technology brings that technology into the country. They bring in their management systems and management techniques. They introduce their brand name, and through that branding, they link the country to global value chains. They bring in new knowledge, and they provide market access. FDI is sticky in that once FDI takes place, once a foreign investor sets up an operation in a country, it's not very easy to fold that and move out again. So when there are problems, when there are difficulties, the investor tries to solve those problems. Its first thought is not to escape. It starts to adapt to the culture of the country in which it's operating. Its level of interaction is higher with local companies. What we say, it gets local in its operations. Types of foreign direct investments: natural resource seekers. These are investors that are coming to access a natural resource. Could be a mineral, oil, could be agriculture, could be forestry products. Market seekers. These are investors that move to a new location, a new country, to gain access to the market of that country, to be able to produce and market their products in that new arena. Efficiency seekers. These would be investors that are looking to invest in a venue where they can reduce their cost of production and thereby export their goods globally from a new export platform in a new country. And lastly, what we call accessing strategic assets. Sometimes investors invest in a foreign country because they want to gain access to a specific company in that country, or a specific technology in that country, or some kind of specific asset in that country. So this is where an investor invests in a foreign country, not to provide anything to that country, but to receive from that country some strategic asset that may be important to the global strategy of the company. The AfripaNet program is the program that we started implementing in Africa in 2001. The implementation of the program started with the setting up of a network of African investment promotion agencies, which we called AfripaNet. AfripaNet was set up in 2001. Today, by 2012, there are 42 members of AfripaNet. And the program was developed and designed through continuous interaction with these African investment promotion agencies. Basically, the objective of the program is what we call to change the culture of investment promotion in Africa. What do we mean by change of culture of investment promotion? As I mentioned, investment promotion agencies need to do many things. In the case of Africa, as in many less developed countries, the IPAs are only providing a limited amount of services. They provide services in terms of telling investors what a nice country there is. The people are very nice. They greet investors at the airport. They take them around. but their real level of interaction at the business level with CEOs, decision makers of foreign companies is very limited. So that kind of professional, hard-nosed interaction with investors is very limited in the case of most African IPAs. Secondly, most IPAs are very much involved in the actual quantity of investment promoted. Their main preoccupation is how to maximize the numbers that they need to report at the end of the year about how much investment was promoted. They have lost the focus of looking into what has that investment done for our economy? How has the investment that we have promoted impacted on the productivity and competitiveness of our domestic companies? How has that foreign investment we have promoted facilitated and brought in more domestic investment? And we're trying to introduce those elements into the operations of investment promotion agencies, thereby bringing the investment promotion activity much more into the center of the development agenda. Make IPAs part of the institutional infrastructure for development. And in that respect, we are providing tools to monitor and analyze investment flows, improve services to investors, and conduct evidence-based strategy and policy advocacy. And these are some things that I will talk about in a little bit more detail. The program has a number of components. We start with data collection. It's important for investment promotion agencies to understand what is going on the ground. They need data. They need real information to be able to do analysis and to be able to provide research to policymakers that's based on real data. Then we develop an interactive data platform for public access so that the data can be visualized, viewed, analyzed online by different users. And we call this the Investment Monitoring Platform, the IMP. And I'll be talking about this at a later stage. The third component is capacity building. This is very important because this is where we then interact with the IPAs, the chambers of commerce and other private sector institutions, ministries, etc., to understand how to use the IMP, how to use the data for policy advocacy, for analysis of trends, etc., and how to provide better information, guidance to investors. And lastly, business linkages, to help link local companies to global markets, help link suppliers to buyers, and this business linkages part involves promoting investments through UNIDO networks internationally, promoting joint ventures as partners, and promoting local supplier development, which we will get into later in the SPX program. So, what is the investment monitoring platform? The investment monitoring platform is an online tool that houses the data collected from companies on the ground. In the case of Africa, we now have collected data from 19 sub-Saharan countries. Those 19 countries are the ones you see colored on the map here. From those 19 countries, we have collected data from close to 7,000 companies, domestic and foreign. And from those 7,000 companies, we have from each one about 800 or 900 variables. So there's a very in-depth level of data within that platform. So the idea is to use that data for analysis to quickly research different types of investors, their performance, and their development impact. The investment monitoring platform is to establish a common data source for the different stakeholders in the arena of investment. Who are these different stakeholders? You have the national institutions. These are the ministries, the agencies, and maybe also even regional institutions in some cases. You have the private sector. That's individual companies as well as private sector organizations like chambers, associations, etc. You have financial institutions, development partners, and civil society at large. And the idea is to unite them around a common shared vision to promote investment. What is the investment monitoring platform? It's a data visualization toolkit. In subsequent lessons, I'm going to go into the monitoring platform and demonstrate how the data that's in there can be analyzed, how different analytical tools can be used to do research using the data. And basically, you can use histograms, bar charts, pie charts, bubble charts, etc. to visualize the data. It's also a platform to share findings and exchange ideas on investment for inter-institutional and public-private dialogue. A user, once they generate a graph or a report, can publish it on the platform so that other users can access that and respond. So, if an investment promotion agency conducts, say, a report on a particular sector in the country, publishes that report with some findings and recommendations, others, perhaps companies that operate in that sector, can respond to it with new information, with additions, with comments, etc. And that would create a sort of dialogue between institutions and companies, as well as between companies themselves. It also provides a business directory. Currently, thousands of verified companies and investors operating in Africa. When we started this project and we wanted to develop the business directory to be able to design the survey, we realized most countries do not have a dependable business directory. There are many lists, but most of the lists that institutions, governments, etc. have are very much out of date. And we had to go about the business of structuring a business directory. And one of the things that this platform will allow is to have a directory of companies that are there, that are operating, that have been verified through UNIDO partners. And lastly, service efficiency tools. The idea for the platform is to allow investment promotion agencies to interact more efficiently with potential investors, to generate online reports, to generate newscasts, to make their presence on the internet much more effective, to channel potential investors to investment promotion agencies, and for investment promotion agencies to provide a much more in-depth analytical response to the needs of potential investors. And it'll also be a tool for IPAs to measure their own effectiveness. How many inquiries have been responded to? How many of those inquiries have actually been transferred into actual investments? At the end of each year, the investment promotion agency would be able to give a report to their board as to the direct effectiveness of their operations. The IMP, the national institutions that use the IMP need to input information from themselves. So, for example, an IPA needs to input information that's not already there, specific to their country, such as What are the costs? What are the costs of labor? What are the costs of land in different areas? What kind of legal support activities can be provided by different institutions, etc. And in return, they get analysis that allows them to do better evidence-based policies, better services for investors, and achieve growth with employment. They're able to use that analysis to understand what is the impact of different types of investors on the local economy, how to identify those types of investors, how to target them, and use the data to understand what are the main issues that affect their decision-making, provide those services, and assist in the formulation of policies that would be most effective in attracting those types of investors. In the case of the private sector, they put in their own data, the data of the companies, their operations data, their perception data, why they invested, etc. And in return, they get out of the platform analytical information about trends, strategic plan. They can use that information to do their strategic planning, to identify new investment opportunities, to understand where they can get different types of investor support and services. So they can use that analysis to see where investment is flowing, how incentives in different countries are attracting investors, where their competitors and partners are investing, and how investors in different sectors in different countries are performing. It also allows investors that are part of the platform to promote themselves. A service within the platform called business networking is a way for companies to be identifiable on the platform, to be searchable and found, and through the BNet, they would be able to promote what products they produce and through the platform to find new business partners. Financial institutions provide data about what kind of products they provide, and they extract from the platform market analysis to understand where are potential growth areas, where to invest, and how their particular investors are doing compared to the overall markets. Development agents can identify and assess what are the gaps in development, what are some of the public goods that need to be put into place for growth to accelerate, and based on that information to design technical cooperation projects that could provide those public goods. And in the case of civil society, they would be able to get transparency about what is going on, how investors are impacting their lives, and how investors are impacting social issues that would be important to different sectors, and based on that transparency, to create support for private sector-driven development. This is in a glance what the UNIDO investment program covers, and in subsequent lessons we will look into the elements of the program in a little bit more detail. Specifically, we'll look at the platform, how it works, and then we'll talk about the SPX program for linking local companies to foreign investors. Thank you very much.